Hello there, Meteorologist here in Tuttle here with you. It looks like it's going to be a busy evening, so I'm going to be covering some severe weather out there, and mainly in the form of looking for tornadic activity. So we're going to do that off and on. I may sign off later on and then have to sign back on again, kind of to see how things go. We're going to play it by ear, but right now I'm watching some storms down south into southern Oklahoma and also across North Texas. So that is going to be my focus point here for the current live broadcast, and then we're going to go from there as we watch it to see how things unfold. So thanks for joining me. You've come to the right place. Appreciate your support in all of this. Make sure you like and share these live broadcasts, because it's going to be an alternative for people to get their weather information, not only online, but also in a different format. One with a lot of science behind it and not a hyping scare tactic or we're all going to die mentality. So I'm going to keep you calm, cool, and collected and allow you to seek shelter from any storm that may pose a significant threat to your family. All right, so let's get on with the show here. First thing we're going to talk about is, of course, we have an upper level disturbance that's making its way into central and southern Oklahoma. We've had a cold front that's moved through. It's generating some cloud cover, some sunshine for some, and then it turns into some storms for other, and those are down south into southern Oklahoma. So if I back out here across the region, show you the big picture, we've got some light bubblings of showers here across central Oklahoma. These are nothing to be concerned with. All the activity that we're concerned with is down south into southern Oklahoma at this point in time. What I'm going to show you on the maps here, we're going to kind of focus on this favorable region here for the evening hours up through about midnight. There will be a few tornadoes in this area, and that does include this area out here along I-35 near the Ardmore zone. That's where the storms are developing, so they do have a potential to produce a tornado in that environment. Down south from there we go into North Texas. There are also some storms developing out here west of Dallas-Fort Worth. Those also have a tornado risk with them, but for right now they've got large hail risk. They'll have a couple of hours to produce a tornado, and then they're going to shift over to a different mode and more of a squall line type nature, more of a linear look to it. When that happens, the tornado threat disappears for the most part, which is good as far as the supercellular type ones. But here in southern Oklahoma, believe it or not, kind of a better atmosphere for shear, etc. So let's take a look here. And again, if you're just now tuning in, this is a live severe weather coverage for potential tornadic storms developing across the southeast and southern Oklahoma and into North Texas. And these will later move into western Arkansas. So tell your friends and family that live in those areas to tune in as we speak, either on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, or Twitter Live. Okay, so down south into Murray County between Davis, Sulphur, Dotery, Mill Creek, heavy cluster of storms here. A couple of supercells fighting each other for dominance. The tornado probability has been very low. It's averaged around 1 to 4% in the algorithms. However, there's a storm chaser down here in Ardmore, and he did see a lowering of a wall cloud here just northwest of town. So if you guys are in Ardmore and you're watching, there is not a tornado warning. There is a developing wall cloud according to this storm chaser, and he's looking in the right spot, what would be the kind of the back end of the storm where developing hook would occur. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and cut in, and we're going to watch this, and I'll talk about what's happening in the atmosphere to cause this stuff, kind of give you a little bit of a mini forecast while we wait to see if this develops into something more than what it currently is. Now, there is a caveat to this, and this is going to require some ground truth, unfortunately. The radar beam at this level here in southern Oklahoma is around 5,000 to 6,000 feet. The problem with that is, to really track a tornado on radar, you need to be below 5,000 feet. 5,000 is kind of the cutoff. So below that, you're actually tracking the actual core of the tornado. Above that, you're just tracking the mesocyclone. In other words, the rotating column of air within the storm itself. So we won't have a great perfect idea of tornadoes based off of Doppler radar when it's this far away. So it does require more help from those folks that do storm spot, either emergency management or storm chasers in the area. And that'll be the case here across all of southeast Oklahoma. This has always been a pet peeve of meteorologists. There's a lack of good radar coverage in this area of southeast Oklahoma. So radar beams are quite high, which eliminates the ability to really track those low-level circulations. So you get a lot of overwarning, in other words, play it safe just in case type tornado warnings down there that may not quite verify. But you got to pretend, at least assume they're going to be a tornado, because the atmosphere, at least above the layer we're able to sample, would be conducive for one. So if you do get a tornado warning, take it serious and just be thankful if one doesn't form in your area. Okay, with that said, let's go ahead and get on with what's happening down here. And now, also keep in mind, these will be proficient hail producers. This one here in Sulphur, I'm going to take you back a few minutes as I was watching this unfold. This is right along I-35 here, just south of Davis. When it was just west of Dodry, the dual pole algorithms, which I'll outline here for you in this region, see this lack of color? In other words, how it kind of goes to a green and blue versus the red surrounding it. That's called the ZDR. If we look at cross-correlation coefficient, it gets down into the greens and blues. What that means is giant hail fell at this time. How giant are we talking about? Tennis balls, probably baseballs as well. The mesh algorithms at the time, I believe, had about 3 inches in diameter. Let's check this one out. Let's see, that one said, yeah, 3 inches in diameter there in the purple. And it kind of dropped its load there, and then it kind of moved off and weakened somewhat. So that's an example of how a hail core that can drop some tremendous hail. And of course, if anyone was on I-35 at that point in time, their car got pounded and damaged with hail. So what we're going to focus on here is the back end of these storms as it comes into the Ardmore area. I can tell you for now, as far as circulation goes, based off of radar in the mid-levels, there's not much to talk about, which is good news. Again, the only ground truth we had was the potential of a developing wall cloud in that area. And it does look like there should be one based off of radar reflectivity signatures, so that's no different there. I would... Okay, so I'm just kind of checking down on my phone. So Dina says, or Lauren, I can't remember who, News 9 is comparing this to May 3rd. So here's the problem with that kind of talk. It's stupid. It's nonsense. It incites fear. It's unwarranted. It's not needed. Each individual severe weather event stands alone on its own. No two events are exactly the same. No two are identical. So anytime people throw around May 3rd, the only reason is for one, fear, gloom, and doom, and to get you to watch and hype it up so that you stay glued to what they have to say. My advice is when somebody talks like that, turn it off, tell them to shut up. It's not productive. So if that's true, if that did happen, I'm not saying it did, I'm just reading a comment there. Ignore it, turn off the TV. Unless you just love to have the crap scared out of you, in that case, go ride on an amusement park ride and do it for a few seconds. But what we're going to do is we're not going to take that approach here. We're just going to take each one individually and deal with it as they come. So let's get down to the details here as far as potential, what we've got so far in these storms. So let's see, let's take the one here in Sulphur and Mill Creek. So the warnings on this, generically speaking, they're moving to the northeast about 25 miles per hour. They're going to have hail potential now around 2 inches in diameter, winds of 60 miles per hour. Remember earlier they were 3 inches, but that strong cell has collapsed since then. So right now we're holding around 2 inches, which is still large and significant hail. You can call that giant hail in the algorithms. Giant hail, of course, does the big damage, and that's anything over 2 inches in diameter. And believe it or not, that's actually hard to get. It's not easy to get giant hail, just like it's not easy to get a tornado. Both are actually, believe it or not, a little bit more on the rare side than your typical garden variety stuff you see in a thunderstorm. Okay, so again, no tornadoes at this point in time. There's no indication anything of that's going to happen yet. It is in a favorable environment. Let's take a jot down south into Dallas-Fort Worth from there. So if you do have friends and family watching in Dallas-Fort Worth and North Texas, make sure you have them tune in as well, because I'll be covering them as they kind of travel along the I-35 corridor here from Gainesville southward through Boyd. All of these so far are behaving. Here's down southwest of Fort Worth. If I take a look at the velocity data, nothing indication of any potential tornadoes, which is good news. There's some pockets of hail. The one down here in Granbury is the biggest hail maker, and then the one up here north into Gainesville is the biggest hail maker that I see amongst all those storms down here. And we'll just kind of watch and see how they progress. If it looks like they'll produce tornadoes, we'll track it street by street down there for Dallas and kind of keep an eye on what's happening in southern and southeast Oklahoma. Let's see. I'm going to occasionally go off screen to read some of the comments from the National Weather Service. Based on the environment, experimental cam output, any storm that gets going and remains discrete will have a risk of becoming tornadic. We discussed that, by the way, in last night's forecast in the blog at noon today. So that's not new for you. In particular, storm north of Ardmore is showing some right deviant motion, very well-defined supercell characteristics. We'll be watching closely, and that's why I'm on live now. So they're in my camp here as far as what we're concerned with and watching for. All right, so now, while we wait to kind of let this storm mature and kind of get better organized, let's take a look at a few things. So the wind profile is important for tornadic storms. I'm looking at the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And what you see here is a wind out of the south-southeast. Actually, I should just say southeast. Turning around to eventually a southern direction around 3,000 feet elevation. Then that goes to a southwesterly direction above that. So it's what we call turning with height. It's called shear, and it's called directional shear. So you want the winds to back at the surface. In other words, go to the right, and then curl left as you go up with height. So that's how you get tornadoes. That's how you get those rotating supercell thunderstorms. Without shear, directional, and speed shear, they struggle. Now, I will show you this. They're struggling in Texas. Why? I mean, there's some big, mean storms down there, but they're not producing tornadoes at this time, and the hail's a little weak because of this little shear pocket here. It's only 20 knots, around 4,000 to 5,000 feet. It's a limitation. That creates weakness in that mesocyclone and that storm development. So that's good news. As long as that spot doesn't pick up in speed, then those guys are a little bit more off the hook. We still got a couple hours to go, though, and the shear is expected to increase with time. That's just right now, it's a little bit on the weak side. Still early in the developing event. Still going to kind of come up here, look up here in southern Oklahoma. If you guys are around Ardmore, again, there's no need to be in your shelters, but you do have a nasty storm just to your north and west that we're going to be keeping an eye on. And then let me see what else we got up here. Just a hail maker for you guys up around Sulphur. And then so we're going to keep an eye down here, west of Johnson County, eastern Carter, Murray, etc. Okay, so now let's go on to a few things we can take a look at. Let's see here. This is an interesting thing here. So this is the Norman forecast sounding. So now the front is already through here. I'm going to show you that on the map. What's important here to take home is that we had a very significant cap today. And I mentioned that in the blog yesterday. It's going to help prevent those storms from forming along the front during the mid and early part of the afternoon and even morning as it moved through central Oklahoma. This is why we don't have to deal with this severe weather. But as energy comes in from the west and southwest, it's starting to cool, erode this little nose, and it allows this atmosphere to become more unstable, and with the help of a surface convergence produces some storms. Let's take a look here at the Warn-On forecast, which is basically a short-term, high-resolution, model-driven forecast based off current radar reflectivity. And we're going to show you how this particular model seems to think things will materialize when it comes to the rotating storm structure. So if we go through time, you can see down here in southwest Oklahoma, on the Red River, northeastern Texas, this is the focal point here through 10 and 11 o'clock, and then moves into Arkansas. Now, you do see these little pockets of heightened updraft helicity, around 200 to 300. One around the McAllister area, another one down here east of Ada, and then down here south on the Red River. This is the model saying a lot of spinning is going on this storm, which would likely indicate tornadic potential. So that's what's on the table, which is why we're watching these things here this evening for you. Okay, so here's kind of a breakdown. If you've been under a rock and you haven't really paid much attention lately, the severe potential here for today, we're talking mainly southeastern Oklahoma. This little batch right here is in case any of those storms in northwestern Texas crosses over the Red River, producing some hail later this evening. We're talking late evening. Otherwise, you can see not much happening here in central Oklahoma. Tornado potential is down here from Ada to Ardmore currently, and that'll be shifting quickly eastward with time here to the rest of southeast Oklahoma. And the timing is already currently ongoing now here in the number 3 shading. Eventually here working into the number 1 shading in an hour or so, and then southwest Oklahoma is much later this evening. Let's see. Tulsa also has a breakdown. By the way, here is the counties in yellow. This is the tornado watch that's in effect across southeast Oklahoma. The orange colors are the severe thunderstorm warnings. There's severe weather timing today, of course, in northeast Oklahoma. It's going to be a little later. The developing along the front is just now underway. So from 5 to 11 here in the shading, just around the Tulsa area, points south, 7 to 2 a.m. in the darker blue shading to western Arkansas, as you notice. So let's take a look at the surface convergence and surface line. We do have a surface low developing right here on top of the Ardmore area, which is why those storms down there are a little more intense. They're on a meso low right now, and that's very favorable for tornado genesis, so keep that in mind. Now, the reason for that, it helps to pump in more of an easterly surface wind with dew points in the low 70s and temperatures in the 80s, so very unstable air feeding into this zone. Now, we do have a front that is kind of moving slowly. It's north of Fort Smith, comes in north of McAllister, back into the surface low. It's not really moving anymore. It's starting to kind of come up stationary. Now, we would draw a stationary front in meteorological school with red and blue, indicating it's not going to really move, if you want to get technical. But that's the boundary we're looking for. So if you're along that boundary and point south, that's the threat. If you're north of the boundary, you might have a little bit of an elevated hail threat, including Tulsa. I'm going to show you that here in a second. But meanwhile, you see the front is through most of the body of the state, with everybody kind of seeing a northeast wind. These little tick bars here are all from the northeast at about 10 to 20 knots. And temperature's a little cooler behind it. Here's another view of that with the tornado watch all the way down to Dallas-Fort Worth, the severe thunderstorm warnings out associated with that. And there's the surface winds here representing the surface boundary just showed you on the Oklahoma mesonet. So again, there's McAllister kind of on the south end over the warm and unstable air, and then kind of curls back in toward the Ardmore area. I'll go back and forth to these maps to kind of take a look at parameters that I need to see on short-term forecasting to predict things and then kind of monitor things. Interesting view here in the satellite viewpoint. You see this bubbling light cube that moved through? This is an enhanced speed shear, 500 millibar speed shear. This helps to increase that shear in the atmosphere. And if you notice, it's moving through central and southern Oklahoma. It actually missed Dallas-Fort Worth. It was a very small pocket, but when it hit this region, it exploded those storms down along the Red River into the Ardmore area. Now, what it's going to do as this continues to move northeast, it's going to interact with this frontal band right here. You can see the developing Q along it. So that's a Q field. That's the frontal zone, so that's going to be where things will kind of try to continue to pop up. And in this area, it's more of a stable, elevated pattern. So this is elevated showers, which may turn into some elevated hail producers here for the northeastern Oklahoma region, including Tulsa, as I mentioned a minute ago. If we look at the supercell composite, I should say, basket of parameters for potential tornado development, let's see how it works out historically. In other words, climatology. We look at all the storms that have happened in this region with a similar type outcome and pattern. Let's see, check mark on the STP, SCP, on the Cape, effective shear, but some of these are they're barely in the bar. All right, effective helicity is too low. So it's not perfect, it's not ideal. The atmosphere isn't 100% great right now for tornadoes, which might be why we're not seeing any right now, but it's favorable enough to keep an eye on it. Let's see here. Let's go to these guys here. See if anything new's come up. Not yet. I'll skip that for now. We're also watching the shear tracks. In other words, rotation tracks in the storms. And you can see where you get the colors. That's where you do have some low-level circulation. There's a little bit here around the Ardmore area in western Texas, but it's nothing to get concerned with at this point in time. But it's going to be a great tool for tracking hail cores and potential tornado. Here's some of the lighter showers moving in the kind of southern sides of the metro and Midwest City, Choctaw, a few showers there, and out towards Shawnee, and then with the heavier stuff down in southeast Oklahoma. Let me see anything else I want to show you. Yeah, we can do here. We can do the model output from the HER. This is our high-resolution model. This shows you how things will evolve tonight. This is why I kind of mentioned the hail potential here. As we go through time, 5, 6, 7, it's actually, believe it or not, a little behind the time. So here's 6 o'clock, for example. We already have storms going. The HER is notorious for sometimes being late to the party. But once it gets to the party, it finally kind of gets a clue. So it does have those storms lined up where they are currently, and it does develop those storms into southeast Oklahoma. You see McAllister and Muskogee kind of on the northern fringe of some of the rough stuff. You do see some stuff out across the Texas Panhandle. Now, you do see Tulsa getting some thunderstorm activity here, and pretty close to Oklahoma City, kind of on the east side of town. These storms have the potential for a little bit of hail, probably quarter inch size hail. I guess at most, worst case, golf ball size, but it should be under that for the most part for hail sizes. So you could get some elevated hailstorms on the northern western sides of this. Now by midnight, you can see most of the heavy storms that moved out of Oklahoma into western Arkansas. And then there's that southern beast storm riding along the Red River that may cross over by the time it hits close to Ardmore, somewhere in that vicinity, producing some hail as it does so. So that is the overall look in the atmosphere, what's happening currently, what I'm watching for, keeping an eye on for you. So you guys have come to the right place. I appreciate you guys' support on all the platforms that I broadcast all this severe weather. You can see at the bottom under your comment section for Facebook, for example, there's a star button. You can hit that and you can send Facebook stars my way if you'd like to support me as a creator and for what I do. Because what we're going to do is off and on is just spend time dealing with these storms and watching them closely. All right, let's go back into radar. So this is down here in southern Oklahoma again, and we're still around the Ardmore region. And let's see, let's put this into motion here. Newest update for the radar, Geometry, has got the what would be the developing hook echo part or the wall cloud that would be rotating. Let's see if it has anything on the velocity data associated with it. And it does. So it's starting to take shape a little bit, starting to kind of come into its own. It's very, very weak, but it's finally showing something up in that area where we did not have that before. So a little change to the storm structure here, so that might be a sign that things start to change a little bit with time, but we're not anywhere close yet to that type of an outcome of a tornado yet. Otherwise, this is more of just a cluster of storms with some hail in it. The hail sizes aren't nearly what they were. There are pockets of some big hail, for example, but not like that big, large swath we saw earlier. East of Sulphur here in this purple shading, it's going to be a little bigger than golf ball size hail. Down here, Mill Creek, probably about the same, probably close to a golf ball size hail. Anytime you see purple on the map, it's usually up to about golf ball size hail. And then now as it's diminishing, that means it's falling below the radar beam, which means it's falling to the ground. So when you see that happen, it means it's dropping its hail cores, and then we have to wait for a new hail core to follow suit with time. Now, if I were to actually take a look at this storm, we can do this two different ways. And I'll pick this northern storm as the hail example. Now, the other day, when we were covering, I can't remember what day it was, but we were looking at the storms and they were low top supercells. They were struggling to get 25,000 feet elevation. Look at these bad boys. These guys are hovering up around 60,000 feet. They're actually above the 60,000 feet line. So these are about 70,000 feet tall. That's enormous for a thunderstorm. They don't get too much higher than that, but that's a lot of potential energy in the atmosphere building these storms up. And then these guys here, you see the cores. So these are hail cores held aloft by the updrafts. And here's another one over here, which may actually be falling downward with time, because they'll go up, be held off for a little bit, and then they'll come down to the surface. So this is kind of a slice of the atmosphere. And we can look at various things in the slice to look for tornadoes or hailstones. And sometimes I'll do that. I'll just flip back and forth. Look for rotation, mid-levels, that kind of deal. Okay, so that's one thing we can do. Let's see here. The algorithms have come in. Probability of hail is obviously close to 90%. Same thing with pockets of damaging wind. Probability of a tornado is still down here around 2% for this southern end. So it's not anything crazy at this point in time. Let's go to a three-dimensional view. We'll take this supercell south first. Give you another viewpoint of that. Again, here's one. This one's a little shorter, around 50,000 feet. Looks like on the stronger reflectivity. The other one I had reflectivity trailed off near zero, which showed you the top of the cloud. This is basically the top of the rain shield. Let's see here. Let's see, south. So in this part, what we're looking for, this is the developing hook echo region and the BWER, bounded weak echo region associated with it. So what we're watching for is development aloft, three-dimensionally, in this zone for production of a potential tornado. So that's where that circulation would go. And we can look at this in various ways. From this view, we can look at it in the velocity aspect of it, which now I'm not impressed with anything there from the base velocity. We look storm relative, same kind of deal. And then we can drag the values down to be weaker to kind of fill in the gap so I can get a better view of how things are matching up. And I usually have it set at a minimum value of where a potential tornado would be a problem, so it's nowhere near that right now. So that's good. And then we can track the rotation. So this would be the rotation areas. So this is the rotation area here. So you can see it's 10 to 20,000 feet elevation. So this little column here is the mid-level rotation of the storm. Now if I were to flatten it down, that's what it looked like on a two-dimensional plane that I usually show you with other products, this little blue spot here. But if I tilt it back up, You can really see it's held aloft, and so this is where the storm is spinning. And then we watch for this spinning area to fill in and work its way down to the surface. And then when we do that, that's where you end up getting the tornadic environment. All right, so there's a lot of cool things you can do with radar these days, which makes the job that I do so much easier. There's so much more information now we can pass along. There's so much more specific information, exact locations, streets, intersections. You know, it's beyond just the whole everybody, you know, in this city take cover. We're way beyond that. If you're watching anyone, wherever you live, you know, here in Oklahoma or other places of the country, and that's what they say, you got to change the channel, man, because that person is an idiot. They just don't have the knowledge to give you anything better than that, and that's sad because they're in a position where they got to save lives and not scare everybody that doesn't need to be scared or prepare. And so that's doing a disservice to you. So if you do come across that, it just means they're just not well trained or educated in radar meteorology, and you're going to suffer from that because you're really not going to get very specific information. And so you really won't know if it's coming towards you or not, and you're just going to have to, you know, I don't know, hold your wits together. At least here we can do direct tracks within a plus or minus, you know, mile area. And then the rest of you know that, hey, I'm not in that zone, I'm okay. I have to deal with some hail maybe or some lightning, you know, that kind of deal, but at least you don't have to deal with a tornado threat. All right, algorithm's still kind of coming in, and they're still up around 2%, so that's good. So no dramatic increase at all at this point in time. Now there is an issue here going on that may be preventing a tornadic situation from developing here in the short term. We have two cells that are disrupting one another. We've got this guy here, and then we've got this guy here. And because the two are kind of interlinked, it's disrupting the overall structure of the storm and the environment that it's in. They need to separate, or one needs to die, or they need to merge and then recycle into one. So it's going through a chaotic period, which is great because it prevents tornadoes, but that's probably the reason why we need to be discrete, separate, all by itself, not influenced by another storm to get a tornado to produce in this environment. Back southwest on the front in Ardmore, because the front is basically stalled in your area. So if you look at this little observation here in Ardmore from the airport, your temperature is 83 degrees, your dew point 7, you have a southeast wind gusting to 16 miles per hour. So Ardmore is pretty much right on the boundary of the cold front. So you're a focal point for getting new development as that energy continues to move aloft upstairs. Now this is a brand new storm here. No rotation with it or anything, but it's barely, you know, in existence. It's just started last probably 10 minutes. All right, so let's go back up here north. You live in Ada, east side. You're getting some hail with that heavy thunderstorm. And then, of course, some light showers up towards Shawnee and I-40 and Okfuskee counties we talked about before. Let's take a look down here in Dallas. It looks like there has been a change down here while we've been focusing into southern Oklahoma and what the forecast was. So let's go down here. Big change in the structure here around Newark and Rome. Looks like a tornado probability of 5%, but it's got a hook echo with it, so that means atmosphere is at least changing to be a little bit more favorable. Wind speeds within this aren't anything impressive yet, but something to watch. Down south we go. This is again, we're down into North Texas. We're into Fort Worth and Dallas. Let's see, we do have a tornado warning that was issued. This is going to be southwest of Fort Worth. 6 o'clock it came out. Oh, it just now came out. Tornado warning remains in effect until 6:30 for northwestern Johnson and northeastern Hood counties. Storm capable of producing a tornado located 1 mile north of Cordova, near North US 377, moving northeast at 10 miles per hour. Radar indicated potential tornado. Storm will be near Wapples around 6:20 and Godley around 6:30. All right, so let's take a look here at this storm. Now this looks like a complicated mess too. Looks like we have a couple of storms that cell merged. Let's go back in time. Okay, so the brief reason why they issued a tornado warning was for this rotation signature on radar. Once you go the next frame, it's pretty much gone and minimized. So Let's see how the velocity looked at that time, because the velocity looked, the tornado circulation area is gone. So there it was briefly right here. So this was a 1 minute, 2 minute tops type tornadic situation out in this area. So yes, it looks like it produced a tornado briefly, but it's since then removed. So that's one of those things you can track in real time. And let's see where it was in relation. I do see some homes north of the circulation, but from where it was over, looks like some farmland. So it was not in a populated area. There are a couple of, looks like business farm structures, that kind of deal. Maybe some industry, greenhouses or something like that. But there's no neighborhoods in this immediate zone, so that's great. I always like to see these things over open land. I know there's always going to be somebody in the path. I get that, but I just don't want to see it over, a hugely densely populated area. It's where you get a lot of trouble. So if you're going to get a tornado, it's always the best spot. It's the one that's out in the middle of nowhere. And anyway, so this is down here southwest of Dallas and Fort Worth, near Cordova. I'm sure I'm totally butchering that pronunciation. All right, let's see here. Let's see if anything else is changed. Right now, it's just an overall broad circulation, which has been lost in the cluster of two storms. So what likely happened was this storm here got into the updraft region of this one, and then it killed it. It disrupted the inflow. So that's actually good. That's why it's the importance of having a storm discrete, meaning separate from others, because when there's an interaction, it can go both ways. It can sometimes help spin up a tornado if it's a little thing with some extra vorticity, in other words, a little cell. But if it's a bigger cell merging with another cell, it usually kills everything, and it has to start all over. So that's actually good timing for that to happen. That means that tornado was short-lived out there just east of Granbury. All right, so that's what's going on down there in Dallas-Fort Worth. Metroplex area, just south and west of town. And then let's go back north of town. There was a pretty decent cell here with a hook coming toward Justin in North Lake and Argyle. Let's see here. Rotation circulation on the ground level. Just not quite seeing it. Let's see, that's at 2,000 feet. So let's go upstairs. There is mid-level circulation in that hook echo, which it should be, but there's no low level. So this is a developing, potentially tornadic storm here, given some more time. Probability of a tornado is only 3%. Even the one interesting down here, it now has a probability of 15% for a tornado. Let's see if I go back far enough. If it gives me the probability of a tornado back then, and let me get to that point. Let's see how the algorithm did. Okay, it was right there. At the time, the probability of a tornado for it was only 14%. It was a quick one. So these algorithms are interesting. I've been playing with those the last couple of years, and I'm trying to get the hang of, what point is a threshold? Is it, and it appears to be more of a ramping up threshold versus a number. You would think, oh, it's got a 90% chance, that's a definite tornado. All right, well, if that's a 14% chance and it produces a tornado for 1 minute, you got to rework that idea. So if it goes from 1% to 2% to 7% to 14%, there you have a ramping up situation. So maybe that's more of the thing to watch for. This is all developmental, experimental, research-based stuff, so it's not a in-use technically thing, as part of the warning process. It's just something interesting. So I use it for me because I love data, and for me, the more the merrier, and it helps me do what I do better. All right, let's go down here to southern Oklahoma again. Let's see what's happening there. Cluster of storms from Ada to Mill Creek to Springer. Another one there around Wynnewood. You're going to have some damaging wind with this right now. Seems to be the biggest threat. Probability of hail, of course, is over 90%, and wind over 87%, which seems, of course, par for the course. And that's about it with that. No tornadic situation, no wall clouds that's been reported. This little interesting junction here, may have turned out to be a developing wall cloud and hook echo, but this guy here is interrupting the flow for this one. So that's disturbing the environment in that aspect. They're not separated enough. So again, that's good news. So this is a mesoscale discussion that just came out from the Storm Prediction Center, so I need to go read that. Let's see what those guys say. So we're going to come over here and refresh this. It's a very narrow corridor. Threat for large to very large hail should become maximized in the next couple of hours. Some of the very large hail could hit 3 inches in diameter. Tornado threat may gradually increase early this evening with any storms that can remain discrete. Key word again there is discrete. The threat for large hail should become maximized. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Convection has erupted over the past hour or two along a cold front dry line. Numerous instances of golf ball size hail have been reported with this activity. Air mass downstream of these severe storms remains strongly unstable. The Cape's up to 4,000. There have been some storm mergers and interactions along the surface boundary so far. And if this trend continues, it could limit the very large hail threat to some extent. Remember I told you get those cell mergers, it disrupts the entire structure of the storm and it has to reorganize. So that goes with hail and tornadoes. Let's see, but still, given the presence of very steep mid-level lapse rates, per the 19Z sounding, an enhanced flow at the mid and upper levels, any supercell that can turn right and move off the boundary will have the potential to produce 3-inch size hail over the next couple of hours. Otherwise, the tornado threat may gradually increase during the evening with any cell that can remain discrete, even though the low-level jet flow is not forecast to become overly strong. And we showed you the bad wind profile down there and a little bit of that weakness in the mid-levels, which may be helping to keep the tornado threat at bay. So that's the latest from the Storm Prediction Center. Now your take-home, if you listen to me read that, you realize that I just talked about all those things in the last 20 minutes. So when you watch me versus maybe you're watching some other guys that do weather on this, there's a lot of frauds out there. There's a lot of there's a lot of con artists that's taking advantage of this whole weather world because either they love weather or they want to make a buck. There's a difference between what they actually know in their head versus what they can just copy and read or what they can just make up. But hopefully, if you watch me long enough, you'll see me say the exact same things my colleagues at the Storm Prediction Center or the National Weather Service say. That's because we're all bona fide, legitimate meteorologists. We all have the same training, same kind of school, so we kind of know what to look for. So that should give you some peace of mind that you're in the right place versus maybe what's out there. And I don't even know what's out there now. Every now and then I get something in my feed. I'm just like, are you serious? There's a guy in Dallas I just came across the day, and I'm just like, he just loves weather. I mean, more power to him, but my gosh, it was cringeworthy. Just the big graphics he put up with big scary words, to get all the clicks. And I'm just like, because he wants to make a living out of it, money. I do this on the side. So I have a real full-time job with the government, so this is what I do on the side. So I do this to help you and not to make money, although it's nice to get paid on the donations you guys send me for the stars. That helps to fund the equipment and pays a little bit for my time. But the primary reason I do is because I love to do it, and that's what I've been doing for years. That's what I went to school for. And every one of us is gifted to help others in some way. So God gives you a gift. Use it, and use it to benefit the lives of others. That is far more rewarding than any dollar you can get or anything else. So that's my preaching take home to you whenever you want to do something in life that's rewarding. So let's go back down here to Dallas. Let's see, that Justin storm looks a little bit better organized. The tail end of the hook still not quite where it needs to be, but it's trying to get there. So what that means is, for you guys around Denton and points south, you need to be aware that this particular storm could be soon producing a tornado. It's going to take a little bit more time. So we're not talking imminent next few minutes. We're talking probably over a 10, 15-minute window maybe. It just depends on how things evolve down here. It's struggling right now. Okay, let's go back down here to the Granbury storm with the old warning on it. Let's see. Yeah, still no tornado with that, just broad circulation at the lowest levels and mid-levels, but nothing that's tight couplet-wise to indicate tornadic conditions, so that's good. So a lot of times the Weather Service, once they issue a tornado warning, They either will just let it expire on its own because the storm that caused the tornado is still there and the weak circulation center is still there. All right. So rather than canceling it and then issuing another one 5 minutes later, they would rather just let it ride, even though it may never produce a tornado again. Now, what do you do with that information? Well, for watching me, you can breathe easy, right? If not, and all you know is you're under a tornado warning, just take it seriously. Stay in your shelters until the storm passes. Now, let's talk about that as well. By the way, let me read this here real quick. What does it say? Rotating wall cloud. Okay, that was a long time ago. It was 30 minutes ago. So at the bottom of this screen on the crawl has all the information you need to keep you and your family safe during tornado situations. How to get information, what to do, where to go, all that kind of stuff is in that crawl. And it runs every broadcast. So, I mean, you can never hear it enough. You can never practice your game plan enough. So when you need it, it's instantaneous. It's like muscle memory, right? So down here in Dallas-Fort Worth, just kind of keep an eye on this stuff. The only one I'm really concerned with at this point in time is this one coming in toward Denton. And even then, it's got a little ways before it gets to a little bit more advanced. So let's go back to southern Oklahoma here. A couple showers there, northeastern parts of Oklahoma County. Cluster of storms from Ada south, a lot of lightning with it. All the little plus signs you see on the map indicate lightning. And then back down here to Springer and Ardmore is the location of the surface boundary, aka cold front, which is helping to trigger these storms. And so far, even though it continues to refire storms, none of them have become tornadic, just severe, producing some hail. All right, now again, we'll be focusing on this region here as we go throughout the evening hours up from Fort Smith along I-40 back into where the storms currently are. This is your hot zone, your hotbed. And how we know that is we can just look at the surface. You can see a north wind here. You can see a north wind here. And then you can see a southeast wind here, southeast wind here. So you basically just connect the dots. You end up drawing your surface boundary right in between and then going down like so. And so that's your boundary of focus. The storms will be in the warm sector, which is what we call this region here, and it's becoming uncapped or very weakly capped. And this would be behind the front, which is more stable. First few thousand feet are more stable. They've cut off the inflow, the surface ingredients that you need to really get those surface-based storms to go. So anything you have left at this point to hope for, if you're a severe weather fanatic, is elevated storms that produce hail. Now, why you'd want a hailstorm, I don't know. They're not good for anything. But that's the only potential going on up here around the Tulsa area down toward Okmulgee and close to I-40. All right, so this is what you do. You're like, okay, got it, Aaron, following you. We're hardcore, we're in it. So tell me about, I'm new here. What is all this tornado talk? I'm from California, I'm from the East Coast, and I watched a little bit of the TV guys, and they've got me scared half to death. All right, so know this. It is very difficult to get a tornado. Very difficult. 2, it's a needle in a haystack, and Oklahoma is a huge haystack, and we're trying to track needles, which means any given event, 99.9% of the entire state won't even have a tornado or even know one exists. It's that teeny tiny fraction that we're tracking at any given time. All right, so let's say, okay, fine, you're in that 0.1% or whatever, and you got a storm coming and it has a tornado, and you're in the immediate track of the tornado. 1, use my weather app, AT's Weather to Go. It's free. Apple and Google Play. It actually alerts you if you're in the immediate track. It will not bother you if you're not in the track of the tornado. It does not overwarn you. It just only warns you if you need to be prepared. And it also predicts the tornadoes up to about 15 minutes ahead of time before one actually develops. That's how fast, how much lead time you can get by using that free app. Other apps aren't designed for that. So this is the proprietary algorithm type stuff. So I suggest you use it at least for severe weather season. If you don't use it after that, it's fine. It's not going to hurt my feelings, but I want you safe and protected. And you can enter as many locations as you want. You can enter grandparents' house, kids' school, second home, vacation home, whatever it may be. You can have all those specific addresses in your phone so you get notified for each one of those. Should severe weather approach, lightning in the area, danger storm approaching, tornado twisting storm approaching, they'll come with a BTI number, 0 to 10. The higher that number, or if that number ramps up, tornado coming your way. If it's a low number, keep watching it, but you don't have to hit your shelters yet. So that's how you kind of use the weather app, AT's Weather, to go. All right, so you've got a tornado coming. The app alerted you. You've got 15 minutes to round up your kids, your pets. That's a lifetime, man. That's an eternity. In the old days, you had like 30 seconds when the sirens went off, right? So now you've got 15 minutes. I mean, you could finish up your TV show if you wanted to. I don't recommend that. I recommend you using that to prepare. But the kids, all right, so make sure you've got their sporting gear on, if they've got helmets and pads, because what your point here is, protect yourself from flying debris. That's the whole goal of a tornado, all right? There's going to be flying things in the air, and that's what you want to avoid. That's what causes the injuries, the lacerations, cuts, that kind of stuff. So the idea is, no matter what building you're in, now I'm not going to speak about mobile homes. Those are no good, period. They'll survive an EF0 tornado, but you'll wish you were never in one. Beyond that, they're trashed. And you just go floating and flying around with it, along with all the shrapnel and sheet metal with it. I suggest you stay out of that. Go somewhere else during a storm if it's coming your way. All right, so that's take care of that. Now, the rest of the homes, as long as they're built to code, in other words, decent, well-built homes, they can survive very well up to about an EF2 tornado. Even most of them now an EF3, because the codes have improved over the last 10, 20 years, so the damage is a lot less. So the structure-wise, they hold up very well. So that's good news, because most tornadoes, believe it or not, are EF0 and EF1. You know what? Let me show you that. You're going, well, I don't know what that is, Aaron. What's an EF0 and EF1? Well, let's do it. All right, EF0. That is a tornado that is 65 to 85 mile per hour winds. Minor damage, shingles blown off, parts of a roof peeled, damage to gutter, siding, branches broken off, tree limbs, shallow root trees toppled, that kind of deal. All right, not a big deal, but scary and loud. EF1 tornado, 86 to 110 miles per hour. Now we're talking some moderate damage, more significant roof damage, windows broken, exterior doors damaged, lost, mobile homes overturned, badly damaged. Now, I've seen some mobile homes in this particular picture here as an image, not only overturned, but just decimated. It's one of those deals. It's okay here in the EF0 category, but I wouldn't want to ride one out from EF1 or greater. You can see, I'm going to move this over. Matter of fact, let me see if I can do this. Get more of this in here. I can get the whole picture. There we go. Okay, that's better. All right, so here's kind of an example of how it can take out a corner of the roof of the house in EF1. Not a big deal. So if you're in the house, you're fine, right? Okay, let's go EF2, 111, 135 miles per hour. Considerable damage. Roofs torn off, well-constructed homes shifted off their foundation, mobile homes completely destroyed, large trees snapped or uprooted, cars can be tossed. EF2 is big business here. So that's a mobile home, what's left one. Here's a structure home, if you can see it. Still, structurally, it's sound. It's missing the roof here and this side here, but otherwise it's still standing. All the walls are still in place. So it is significant damage, especially on an insurance claim, but when it comes to the actual protection inside, you're still okay. All right, now EF3 starts to get a little hairy here. It's 136 to 165 mile per hour winds. We're talking severe damage, entire stories of well-constructed homes destroyed, significant roof damage done to large buildings, homes with weak foundations can be blown away, trees begin to lose their bark. Homes with weak foundations. This is mainly for those that are built on cylinder blocks, dirt pads. We're talking old school homes. We're not talking new construction. So again, EF3, usually homes do pretty well. Here's an example of one where some of the walls in the outside corner have been caved in, removed, and of course the roof is gone, but a lot of the interior walls still remain. So if the home is well built, you still have a pretty good chance that everything internally in the middle is still fine. And then we get to the EF4 and EF5. Now, these are extremely rare. I mean, we're talking, 2 to 3% of all tornadoes combined versus the other 98%, from these other ones combined. Extreme damage, well-constructed homes are leveled. Cars are thrown significant distances. Top story exterior walls of buildings will likely collapse. And there's really not much difference in damage from an EF4 to EF5 tornado. EF5 is winds greater than 200 miles per hour. massive, incredible damage. Well-constructed homes are swept away. Steel reinforced concrete structures are critically damaged. High-rise buildings sustain several structural damage. Trees completely debarked, not just uprooted, but debarked. So here's a big tree uprooted in EF4, and then there just won't be any much left of a tree in an EF5. It's like it was a toothpick left. Everything else all around it's gone. So in that particular example, in this case, I mean, if this is the worst of the worst, which is extremely rare, this would be a concrete slab where the house is gone. It's an EF5. This would be like a business center example here, concrete, say you go downtown or whatever, and it's pretty decimated. There's a lot of damage there and stuff ripped out. So in this situation, it's tough, and unfortunately, no matter kind of what you do to protect yourself, if you're above ground, you're in God's hands at that point, and sometimes if it's your time to go, it's going to be your time to go, and there's nothing you can do about it, and that's unfortunate. Obviously, we'd like to always save our life and live, a long, healthy life, but sometimes it's not in the cards. Luckily, like I said, an EF4 or 5 are extremely rare. Very hard to get those. It takes a lot of things in the atmosphere for that to happen, a lot of interaction with surface boundaries, outflow boundaries, cold fronts, that kind of deal that are kind of just stalled, a lot of extra vorticity. So those are very rare, which is good, because you just have to have just like perfect lineup of ingredients in a perfect atmosphere environment. So we can focus on the fact that they're very survivable throughout these our first 4 categories from EF0 to EF3. All right, so now that you know the background of tornado strength and the damage associated with that, it's always the same. The very center part of whatever building you're in, you want to be away from the outside walls, outside windows, because you don't want, of course, if it's strong, outside wall collapses, of course, you don't want any of that debris to fly in and hit you. So you want to be in interior space, closets, bathrooms, stairwells, anything like that that's going to get you away from the outside walls and windows. And you want to protect yourself from any flying debris, so extra blankets, like I said, the sporting equipment for kids. The old school adage of just jumping into the bathroom, putting a mattress over your head, perfect, nothing wrong with that. What you've done is you went into the bathroom, interior, so now you got walls surrounding you, shut the door. Then you're in the bathtub, which is a mini interior encasing with the mattress on top of you to prevent any flying debris from pelting you in the back of the head or whatever. So those are all things you can do. Get cozy, put all the kids in the bathtub. Say, hey, you're gonna be a little tight fitting in there, but you can, you'll survive. So just get in there, and it's a very short period of time. It'll seem like an eternity when you're in a tornado, but it lasts seconds to at most a minute. It's very rare that you have a tornado that develops and just sits still. They're usually moving at a pretty good clip, so the time that it's over a specific area usually is less than a minute. Now it's going to feel like the worst minute of your life from the sounds, the pressure, the noise, things flying around. I get it, but when you're in that environment, just keep in mind that, tell yourself that most tornadoes are small, and so it'll be minimal damage, and so that's what you have to do to prepare for any tornadoes around here. So that's the overall picture of how and what they are and how you defend yourself, protect your family, that kind of deal. And go back to what I said at the beginning, they're very rare to get, although we talk about them all the time. Why? Because it's weather, and people love the weather, and it's one of those nature's beasts that when they occur, they get your attention, and for the right reasons. So when it comes to a warning, never discount one, never ignore one, take it serious, seek shelter. Now if you have, and this is all above ground, by the way, if you have a below ground or even above ground shelter, doesn't matter if it's an EF4 or 5, you're fine. All right. If as long as it's built to FEMA guidelines and it's not a homemade deal made out of a few blocks of concrete, I've seen a homemade one made out of rebar and cinder blocks that poured in concrete. That did great, but that was a fortress, and I saw it when the rest of the house was gone. So if you do it yourself, you know what you're doing. You can build your own construction type. Just use the FEMA guidelines to do it. But these other tornado companies, as long as they're legitimate, and I don't know any that aren't, they all use FEMA guidelines because they don't want to get sued, and obviously they don't want you to die. So They build them like they should. It's just your preference as to whether or not you want it above ground or below ground. Below ground, garages, out in the field or in the yard, front yard, backyard, whatever. Those are all work just fine. The above ground works just fine too, and they vary on how they're designed as well. There is one thing you want to keep in mind above ground. It will be loud. In other words, you will have shrapnel and debris hitting that above ground material, the steel. Now, it won't go through the steel. It may dent it in parts of it, but it won't go through. So you're totally protected. But your ears are going to hate you. So you need to have earplugs at a minimal stored in there. Or I would get gun range headphone, or whatever you call them, headsets, or I forgot what the proper term because I've been at a range in forever. They're in the closet. I got to dust them off. But ears, your gun range ears, because those will help to minimize the noise. They're made for that type of loud stuff at a short distance. I would have a whole slew of that for the families, and if mine are battery powered, so make sure you got some extra batteries in there. So each year, clean out your shelter, replenish the batteries, and what you take with you, stuff that you can't live without, right? That you're to lose in the tornado. That's it. That's all you take. If you want to take a little water, a snack, it's fine. But keep in mind, it's not like you're going to be trapped in there for days. At worst, you'll be in there for a couple hours before emergency crews come in and dig you out of the rubble or help you out. So just know that it's not like you're going to be living there for weeks, without supplies. So just take like your important stuff, medications, driver's license, anything that's going to be a pain to replace or deal without. And don't forget shoes. Shoes is the number one thing that people don't think, and it's the number one injury after a tornado passes. Why? Because you walk around on all the debris with bare feet, and there's those rusted nails all over the place, and that's not a good deal. So there you go. That was a very long-winded spiel about severe weather, specifically regarding tornadoes. So I hope that was educational and informal. You're not going to get that kind of stuff watching the TV weather coverage because it's all about, the impending doom. So there's time where I can spend a lot more time in this format to explain a lot of things behind the scenes, especially when there's a lull in the activity. So I'm not just standing over a map pointing at hail cores for 30 minutes repeating myself. This is a little bit better educational. All right, so let's take a look here down in Dallas. Storm down here, southwest. Nothing to it. The one in Granbury, a new one down there. Not much to that one. Scroll up here. The one around Denton, it's still trying. It's got this little leftover appendage on it, but it's not doing anything really either. So that's okay. All right, so let's go into southern Oklahoma and southeast Oklahoma now. So stretching from Okemah southward to Holdenville, little storm there, no big deal. Allen to Stonewall, pockets of hail within this one, south of Ada. Probably a little bit of wind with that one as well through Johnson County. And then down toward Medill and Kingston, same kind of idea. Heavier, bigger thunderstorms redeveloping along the frontal boundary here around Mill Creek and Springer, and then right on the east side of Ardmore, and then down toward Overbrook and across the river we go, or at least close to it, from Marietta to Thackerville, and then probably, Gainesville's gone. That one's moved off to the east. So those are all severe thunderstorms. They produce lightning, hail, damaging wind, typical stuff here in Oklahoma, but no tornadic activity. So that's good. Jody the Canadian appreciates the education. That's awesome. Thanks, Jody. So Shane, I see your comment, but I keep everything guarded. It's a trade secret. I don't tell anybody what I do or what platforms I use or where I get the data. It took me years to build and design all this, so I kind of keep it all right here. The proprietary knowledge. Nothing personal, just, if I do all the work, why make it easy for others, right? You got to do the work yourself if you really want it. It's out there. You just got to find it. Let's see here. So this is where we are currently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break, and I need to eat dinner, rest my voice, because I think we're going to have some tornado activity here once we get in another hour window of time. I think somebody will start to misbehave, and so when that happens, I'll come back on. Make sure when you do, you have your notifications turned on. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Join all of those platforms and click the bell, get notified when I go live, or full notifications. And you're saying, but I don't want you on YouTube. That's fine. The point is, the algorithms these days are horrible at providing what you actually want or need. So the best workaround is to join all of those, and then whichever one will notify you, go watch on whichever platform you're comfortable with, because they're all going to be a little different. And that way you at least get notified. Because if you just depend on Facebook, for example, to notify you, it ain't going to happen. Facebook stinks at this notification business. It used to be great. Now it stinks. They jacked it up. So these other methods will help you at least get notified. There is a workaround with Facebook. You can join my private Facebook group. It's a closed group page for my hardcore weather fanatics. Just subscribe. That way, through a donation from Patreon or the Facebook fan subscriptions or PayPal, there's some links on my website, aarontotalweather.com. And once you donate, I get you into that private group, and Facebook will notify you that way as well. So there's many ways to try to get notified so you get the latest information. So when I do go live and I do cover tornadoes. All right, so that is it for now. I will be back on here at some point here soon this evening. So stick around, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.